Hello and welcome. In this video, we're looking at forced heirship. If you're planning on leaving the US and immigrating to another country, this is something you should be aware of and have a legal professional help you work out what the best solution is for you. Forced heirship is something that is not applied in certain countries in Europe, and here's a list of the countries where forced heirship does not apply. And then here's a list of countries where forced heirship does apply in Europe. So in these countries, there are specific rules that regardless of what your will says in the US, you would be subject to estate distribution rules established by the country. And then, of course, there are taxes in the US. A little over $13 million is exempt from estate taxes as of 2025. In many of these countries, that threshold is much lower before tax rates start to kick in. So one of the things to consider is if you do end up selecting a country which has forced heirship, then you need to understand whether it's the worldwide assets or your local assets that are subject to the forced heirship rules. Now, let's look at the countries and what these rules might look like to understand what the concept of forced heirship is. For example, in France, if you have one child, 50% of your estate must go to that child. If you have two children, then 66.7% must go to those children. Now, we haven't researched it deeply enough to figure out whether that needs to be equally split or it can be unevenly split, but the total needs to be 66.7%. And if you have three or more children, then 75% of your assets need to go to the children. Looking at Spain, two-thirds of your estate is reserved for children. If you look at Italy, one child is 50%, two is the same as France, 66.7%, and three is 75%. In Portugal, two-thirds of the estate is reserved for children and spouse. In some countries, there's specific amounts that go to a spouse, and in others, there's no reference of the spouse. So this is really important given that it might apply to just your local assets or to your worldwide assets. So if you have an estate and you set some will up and you've got trust set up in the US, some of these countries will disregard those trusts and wills. So keep that in mind and consult with a legal professional in the countries you're going to. There is a rule called the EU succession regulation. Countries that elect to participate in this regulation allow some form of compliance with your US will. It's a complex topic and you do need to see a specialist. Now let's take a look at countries outside of Europe. Here are some countries outside of Europe, this includes Latin America and Asia, where there are no forced heirship rules, which means your US will should work. And then here is a list of the countries where there are forced heirship rules. And in South America and in Asia, they include Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, Venezuela, Indonesia, Japan. Malaysia has a star because that applies to those operating under the Sharia law. Philippines, South Korea, and Vietnam. So now that you know that these countries have forced heirship rules, you might want to be aware how your estate will be distributed. Again, I haven't dug into these countries to understand whether these rules apply to worldwide or local assets. And I hope that this video has been helpful, and I would add that given the complexities and constant legal changes in various jurisdictions, for example, in Germany, there's an action underway where they might exclude certain portions of the EU succession regulation. It's crucial for you to consult with a legal expert in the respective countries to understand the specific implications of electing foreign law for estate planning purposes. So, if you're someone with an estate with a specific distribution methodology in your mind, and you're moving to a country with forced heirship laws, you may want to understand the law and see what steps you can take to achieve your objectives. I hope this video was helpful. In upcoming videos, we'll talk about 6 countries that we targeted and look at the various attributes we looked at, how we assessed it, and determined which countries we'd narrow it down to. Later this year, we plan to visit 2 of those final target countries, both Portugal and Greece. We'll do videos on them when we get out there and try and understand which of those is better suited to our long-term goals. Thank you so much for watching.